Now, where did we get to? Oh, yes, I remember. Time to move on. I'd applied for loads of jobs in the months since I'd left school. Office work, supermarkets, catering, filling stations, you name it. Most employers wanted experience, and some ads actually said unemployed persons need not apply, which is criminal in my opinion. I'd started applying in August, and I had a couple of interviews, but as I said before, sleeping in clothes make you look scruffy. And by Christmas, I looked like a tramp. I knew nobody was going to take me on looking like that, and I started getting really depressed. Christmas didn't help. I spent it at Carol's, which was kind of her and Chris, but it was still the worst Christmas I'd ever had. For a start, there was my present. Carol and Mum put their money together and got me this sleeping bag. A really posh job, quilted, waterproof, the lot. It must have cost a bomb, and I knew they only meant to be kind, but it said something to me. It said they thought of me as a dosser, someone who might always be a dosser, so might as well be as comfy as possible. It hurt like hell, but I didn't let them see, and I have to admit, it's come in handy ever since. Anyway, that was that. And then there was Boxing Day. Well, Boxing Day, Mum came round and she brought Vince with her. I can only think that Carol had never told Chris the full story about him, or surely Chris wouldn't have had him in the house. Anyway, they came for dinner and stayed till 1 o'clock next morning. And of course, everybody got drunk, everybody except me. And once we got a skinful, Vince started making cracks about me. The ghost of Christmas past, he called me. Don't ask me why. I was a disgrace, he said, stuffing myself with my sister's grub, sitting there with my long hair and tatty clothes and making Mum feel guilty when she had nothing to feel guilty about. I was a scrounger, a sponger, a layabout. And I ought to be looking for work instead of sitting with a face as long as a fiddle, spoiling everybody's Christmas. It didn't feel like peace on earth, I can tell you that. There wasn't a lot of goodwill toward men floating about, and the worst thing was nobody stuck up for me. Not even my sister. It was then I knew I'd worn out my welcome, even here. So, on December 28th, I borrowed the price of a one-way ticket to London. Carol lent me the money. She even came to see me off at the station and hugged me before I climbed on board with my backpack and my bedroll. The next was from a stinky old ciderhead in Lincoln's Inn Fields when I gave him 20 pence to leave me alone. Daily routine orders for is 1900 hours, and this has been a most satisfactory day. Most satisfactory. Secret of victory in any campaign is planning and preparation, and my planning has been meticulous, and my preparations are now complete. I have acquired a cat. This was my finishing touch. I can't abide the arse-licking, hair-scattering beast myself, but you have to admit there's something reassuring about a home with a cat in it. A cat speaks of warmth, comfort, placid domesticity. A man who keeps a cat can't possibly mean anybody harm, can he? I've christened it Sappho. A brilliant touch, this, suggesting it does a degree of scholarship in the creature's owner. I don't even know whether the bloody thing's male or female. I don't care. The point being is that the fellow with a cat called Sappho is going to project a certain sort of image. Kindly and a bit academic. He might be expected to have a vague conscience about sleeping snug and warm while others live rough. He'll be a bumbler, but he might be stirred now and then to actually do something about this, to offer grub and a bed for the night to some poor unfortunate soul. No strings attached. So it's Shelter and Sappho. Could be a series on the telly, couldn't it? Shelter and Sappho, otherwise known as The Invincibles. All is ready. Recruiting can now commence. So, London it was, and London it is. I made a lot of mistakes. Most people do for the first time in London. Trouble is, once you've made it, then it's practically impossible to put things right. You're on the old downward spiral, and that's that. I know you've no idea what I'm on about, so listen. I arrived in midwinter. Not a good idea. Okay, so things were bad at home, really bad, and I had to get out. But if I'd known what I know now, I'd have hung in there a bit longer. Toughed it out with Carol and Chris till March or even April. Spend one January night in a shop doorway and you'll know why. I had 150 quid on me when I got off the train at King's Cross. It was what I was left of my savings, plus a 20 Carol slipped me when Chris wasn't looking. 150. Doesn't sound bad, does it? Sounded okay to me. My plan was I'd get a room somewhere. Nothing posh, a bed sit, and then I'd look for work. Again, nothing posh. I'll take anything for a start, just till I establish myself and look around properly. I was dead green, see? A babe in arms. It isn't like that, but I didn't know. Someone's dead green. It's a saying that people might use to show that they're very innocent, they're very naive, they don't understand what's going on. Same for a babe in arms. It's a similar saying. I strode out of the station with my backpack and bedroll, and it felt like a new beginning. This was London, wasn't it? The centre where it all happens. It's big, it's fast, it's full of opportunities. Nobody knows you. Where you're from and what's gone before, that's your business. All that stuff with Vince, it never happened. It's a clean sheet. You can invent your own past and call yourself anything you choose. I made a brilliant start, or so it seemed at the time. I turned right out of the station and started walking. I had no idea where I was going. I was looking for somewhere to live. The street I was walking up was called Pancras Road. I hadn't gone far when I came to this row of shops under a block of flats. One was a newsagent, and there was some postcards stuck on the glass door, and I went for a closer look. They were ads, as I thought they'd be. Articles for sale, well, babysitters wanted, house repairs done cheap. One said B&B, suit working man, rent negotiable. The word negotiable was spelt negotiable. And the whole thing looked like a 6-year-old had written it, but I didn't care. There was an address, Wharfordale Road, and I went in the shop and asked directions, and it was back the way I'd come. It was a sleazoid place, and the rent wasn't all that negotiable either. 50 a week, the guy said. He'd a face like a rat. Fortnight in advance, he said. I'm doing you a favour. Most places want a month. I'm looking for work, I told him. I haven't much money. Can we negotiate? I told you I was green. Negotiate? His voice was a sort of screech. You can negotiate yourself right out of my house, lad, if that's your attitude. It's 50 a week. Take it or leave it. Well, I took it. And that was my second mistake. Oh, I was thankful at the time. Don't think I wasn't. I had a place to lay my head and keep out of the weather, and I hadn't been in London an hour. I'd know there were other places I could have tried, places like the YMCA, where there's help and advice and food, as well as a bed if you're lucky enough to get in. Like I said, I didn't know. I looked for work, I really did. First thing next morning, I went to the job centre. The woman there said I should go to the careers office because I wasn't 18. And she said I should go to the DSS as well. I went to the careers office and filled in a form, and they asked where I'd come from, and I said in the north. I don't want to be too precise in case good old Vince took it on his head to come looking for me. I gave them my address, but it was just like at home. There was no work and no training places. I went to the DSS and filled out another form. I asked for advice and a guy interviewed me. I told him I had £50 after paying 2 weeks rent in advance and I was looking for work. He asked me a lot of stuff about why I'd left home, and I explained about Vince and Chris and all that. And he said they have to decide whether I was entitled to anything. It might be several weeks, he said. That was when I started to feel nervous. I had a room for 2 weeks maximum. I didn't know much, but I had a feeling Ratface wasn't the sort who'd wait for his money. If I wasn't earning within a fortnight, well, I'll be out on my ear. Daily routine orders 5. It's begun. The recruiting. And it was easy as falling off a log. I didn't even have to go far. My flat, mine and Sappho's, is in Mornington Place, and I found my first recruit in a doorway near Camden Station. A mile, if that. Mind you, it was a filthy night. Cold, wet, and windy. Cut straight through that wind. I was wearing a Parker stormproof over trousers and strong boots, and I was still perished. What he must have felt like in a damp, tatty denim, I shudder to think. It was 01:30, so he'd probably been there an hour or two, freezing his tabs off. And that's why he came so easy. What I did was, I squatted down in front of him and said, "What's up, mate? Down on your luck?" I smiled as I said this, my best do-gooder smile. I was prepared to for a possible rebuff. I mean, he might have been deeply suspicious, thought I was a woofter or something. But it didn't seem to cross his mind. Half daft with cold, probably. Anyway, he opened his eyes and looked at me and frowned and mumbled, "Who are you?" He was Scottish. "Me?" I gave him a smile again. "Shelter's my name. I help run the hostel on Plender Street." That got him. "Hostel," he said. "What sort of hostel?" "For young people," I said. "The Townhouse Project. You might have heard of it." He wouldn't, because we didn't exist. I made the whole thing up now, and name and everything. Part of my preparation. He fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. "Any chance of a bed?" he says. "Bite to eat?" I shook my head, the rueful gesture I'd practiced in the mirror. "Not tonight, I'm afraid. Full up. Might be something there tomorrow, if you get there early." "Ah," he says, and a light goes out of his eyes. He's thinking about the long, cold hours ahead. I let him ponder the prospect for a bit and then said, casual like, "There's a comfy couch at my place if you don't mind roughing it." Roughing it. Brilliant touch, that. And it worked. "You sure?" he says. The light's back and I can see his little brain working. He's thinking, this guy runs hostel, warm beds, grub, it gets full. But if I'm with him, I'm in, right? "You sure?" he says. I give him the smile again. "Sure, no prob. It's just round the corner. Come on." And that's all there was to it. I strode out and he trotted at my heels like a ruddy poodle. It was pissing it down and he was sodden by the time we reached the flat. I introduced Sappho, showed him the bathroom, threw in some stuff I'd got for the purpose, thick sweaters, cord trousers, sort of stuff, do good as wear, and went off to eat some tomato soup. While he was sitting on the sofa scoffing it, I slipped up behind him and put him out of his misery. Cruel? I don't think so. He's neither cold nor hungry now. Nobody wanted him, so nobody will miss him. And there's one less dosser to clear up the place. Who loses? So we, perhaps for the first time, begin to see now exactly what Shelter's plan is, intends when he talks about clearing the streets. And in this poor homeless person's case, he's been put out of his misery as Shelter would have it. Page 25. I've seen lots of movies where the characters who on the road picks up casual work in towns he's passing through, washing dishes, cutting firewood, sweeping. I couldn't believe it that in a city the size of London, it might be impossible for a guy to find that sort of work. I mean, the place is packed with restaurants and cafes and kebab houses, and not counting all the pubs. During my 2 weeks in Wharfdale Road, I must have tried 200 of them, starting with those in the King's Cross area. I got nowhere at all. As the days passed, I was in the area of my search, and by halfway through the second week, I'd been as far as St John's Wood and south into Lambeth. Trampled down the narrow little streets of Soho and the boulevards of South Kensington from early morning. I thought potential employers might be impressed by my willingness to be out and about early, till late at night. I offered my services in sleazy, greasy cafes and posh hotels and everything in between, till my feet felt bruised and I could hardly drag myself out of bed in the morning. I walked everywhere to save money. I lived on cheese rolls and tea, but I was down to £9 and some change when Ratface came for his rent. It was Friday night, 8 o'clock. I just got in. The room was freezing cold and I was treating myself to a quick burst of the cash goblin electric fire before bed when there was this knock on the door. I opened it and it was him. He said 2 words: evening and rent. I looked at him. It's only Friday, I said. I'm paid until Monday. He shook his head. Friday's rent day, sunshine. But I moved in on a Monday, I protested, and paid 2 weeks. That makes the room mine till Sunday night. He moved so quickly, I hadn't time to step back. 1 second there was a yard of space between us, and the next he had a bunch of my shirt in his fist, and his face was an inch from mine. Listen, sunshine, he hissed. This room's mine. I make the rules here, and the rent's due. If you got it, pay it. If you haven't, I'll give you 5 minutes to pack your stuff and get out. He shoved me, followed me in, leaving the door open. I tried to reason with him. I told him I was waiting on a decision by the DSS. He laughed. You're waiting, son. He snarled. I'm not. I said I was looking for work and pointing out that I'd been quiet and kept the room tidy. I didn't know what I was saying, really. I was that desperate, but it was no good. He told me to pack my bag and stood there with his arms folded while I did it. When I'd finished, I brushed past him on my way to the door and I said, I'll have you for this, sooner or later. One way or another, I'll have you. His laughter rang in my ears as I went down the stairs. And that's how I came to join them. The homeless kids I'd seen everywhere on my travels. The kids I'd given change to a week ago when I thought things were bound to work out. I was one of them now, poised at the top of a downward spiral. Daily routine orders 6. Time for a brief discourse on the subject of killing. Killing humans. Murder, not to put too fine a point on it. Oh yes, that's what they'd call it, if they'd ever found out about it, which they won't. Murder. The deliberate killing by a human being of another human being. But you see, I was trained to kill. As a soldier, it was my chief function to kill. Waste, doing, whatever you want to call it. Those among my fellow humans whose activity happen to be displease the powers that be in my country, and this is where the confusion arises. This is where distinctions get a bit blurred. Killing by a soldier of the enemies of this country is not murder. They don't jail you for it. In fact, if you do it really well, they give you a medal. So why, if I'm disposing of these druggy dossers whose activities are dragging the country down, am I a murderer? It's all nonsense. I'm not a murderer at all. I'm a soldier out of uniform, killing for his country. Trouble is that because the country doesn't approve, the whole thing becomes a hole and corner affair. You got to hide what you're doing, and that brings up the hard part, which is disposing of the body. You see, soldiers in uniform don't have this problem. They don't have to conceal the bodies of their victims. Quite the reverse, in fact. They lay them out in rows, count them, take snapshots of them, like shooting parties used to do with pheasants. Only difference is they don't eat them. They shove them in a big hole and bury them, and that's that. No problem. Everyone knows they're there, nobody cares. But if you're out of uniform, like me, if you're what they call a murderer, you've got to get rid of the body. And that's a real worry. Believe it or not, it's far and away the hardest bit of the old job. Killing's easy. Dead easy. Especially if you've been trained to it. Though, of course, anyone can do it if they put their mind to it. but more murderers have come unstuck because they made a mess of disposing of the bodies than through any other cause. It's a fact. Everything's been tried. Acid baths, dismemberment, cement boots in a deep river, everything. And more often than not, it's no use. The body, or parts of it, turn up sooner or later and the killer is caught. I won't be. No, because unlike most so-called murderers, I've planned in advance. My flat's on the ground floor, you see, and there's a handy little space, quite a big space, actually, under the floorboards. It's beautifully ventilated. Stick your hand down there and you feel the draft. So it'll stay cool, even on the warmest day. That's important. I won't go into why, because it's not a pleasant subject. Let's just say bodies in a warm place have a way of betraying their presence after a day or two. So I've got this place. I like to think of it as my built-in refrigerator. And that's where our little friend of last night now lies. As I've said, he doesn't feel the cold, nor is he cluttering up anyone's doorway. The whole thing's so much tidier, don't you think? So I think we'll leave it there for today. At the end of that chapter, you can begin to see how, by looking at a certain perception of things, by framing things in a certain way, how perhaps people can sometimes convince themselves that the unreasonable is reasonable, that the unjust is just. And it's about how you look at a situation. And one of the things we need to learn as we read and as we study English as a subject is that the ability to use words and sentences and take a certain point of view enables us to portray things in a way that we want to. And the better we are at using those words, and the better we are at framing those things in our writing, then the better we can be at trying to convince people of the way we want to be. And we can see here with Shelter and how Robert Swindells is writing this, that what is certainly very unreasonable, he presents it as very reasonable. So I hope you enjoyed this morning's reading. I will put that on YouTube later for anyone who hasn't been able to join us and who wants to have a read later. And we will start again on Monday at 9:30 on page 31. It may be that I'm in a meeting on Monday at 9:30, and if I am, I'll pre-record it so that you can watch it, even if I'm not able to do it live, or listen along rather than watch. So have a good day, enjoy the weekend, and hopefully I'll see some of you Monday, either in a pre-recorded fashion or in real life. Take care, bye-bye.